Welcome to the Self-Care Savage podcast. Self-Care Savage is a term that I've coined that combines elements of self-care and a more assertive, bold approach to taking care of oneself and growing self-worth. On the Self-Care Savage podcast, we will explore how self-care and self-worth are always in the driver's seat in all parts of our lives and how we act and react to life. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and take a quick second to give the podcast a rating and a review. That's how we grow and spread the message. On today's podcast, we have Zach Hazlett. Zach is known on Instagram as the Outdoor Therapist. Zach is a marriage and family therapist who merges his passion for nature with his therapeutic work. Raised in Moab, Utah, Zach founded Get Outside Together, using outdoor activities like river rafting and hiking to help individuals and families heal emotionally and reconnect. His unique approach to mental health emphasizes the restorative power of nature and shared experiences. Through his Instagram, Zach shares insights on self-compassion, mental health, and self-acceptance, helping others navigate life's challenges with a fresh, nature-centered perspective. Let's go! Zach Hazlett. So I'm so happy to have you here. I have been following you a little bit. I must say that the reason I followed you or found you or even heard about you was because of one of my followers tagged me in a comment they made of this social media journey that I've been on, which has been completely unintentional. There's never a design to this or anything. So, but anyways, there was a comment they tagged me in, and of course it was somebody that, sometimes our followers feel that they have to be protective of, sometimes they're people. And the thing about it is, I hope, I wanted to be clear with them as well as you first, certainly you that I didn't see any issues with anything, and wanted to let them know that, look, we're all trying to spread some positive stuff out here, and we're all saying a lot of the same things, or sometimes we use the same quote. And it's the great thing about it is with social media is people are able to choose where they want that message to come from. And I don't care who it's from, just as long as they're getting benefit from it. First question I have for you. So your journey as the outdoor therapist is extremely inspiring, obviously, by the growth of your community. So how did your experiences growing up in the outdoors, kind of with that exposure, shape your approach to therapy? Like, I know you work with families and couples and things like that as kind of, maybe a specialty or whatever you want to call it. But how did all that, influence you, the outdoors?
Oh, that's a big question. First off, thanks for having me, and thanks for reaching out. It's funny. You were one of the first people on social media that I followed, because I was like, this is like a straight shooting, tell it how it is. The reality is you just got to focus on you and keep going. And that was a big thing. You got to know your worth, as your tagline is. But so I was obviously excited to hear from you. But to answer your question, Scott, I growing up in Moab, my parents met as river guides. I was born and raised literally on the river. I've spent years of my life collectively on the river, and I've just seen how much of an impact nature has on healing. It's nearly impossible. I will not say it's impossible. It's nearly impossible to be out in nature, away from phones, away from, work and the stresses of everyday life, and be anxious and sad. You're right. It's really so grounding and so naturally therapeutic that I was just like, man, this has got to be, there's got to be more to this. And so during grad school, I researched how outdoor recreation impacts togetherness and family cohesion, and researched a number of other things. And I just realized that what people need to do is get outside. They need to get outside. They need to be together. They need to focus on them and the relationships that actually matter, and stop worrying so much about all the little things that don't matter. And I guess growing up, seeing that happen to families as they'd come on vacations, and be able to connect and laugh and interact for the first time, that was huge. And so I was like, there's more to this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And I think that, your exposure growing up in it and, it's not just something you learned later. I mean, this was all kind of in you before you understood the value I can't imagine being a kid running around in the area you were in, just running around, oh my gosh. I mean, anyways, I think back and that would have just been amazing, running around through all that and your parents being river guides and all that. That's crazy. So, so you've combined, a lot of this, adventures with your therapeutic practices through your work. So, what are some of the most transformative experiences that you've witnessed with some of these families and couples and individuals you've worked with?
Yeah. One that comes to mind immediately is actually one of the very first trips that I was doing that had more of a family connection focused. And I have to say, I am a therapist and I do therapy. Out on the trips, I don't practice therapy. That's not like, it's a therapeutic thing, but it's not actually therapy. I have to say that to cover myself.
Right.
Um, but there was this family that came, and like, imagine this, we have these 5 boats all hooked together, just floating down the river, kind of the flat water section before the rapids, before it gets too crazy. And day one, we have this little kid, we'll call him Timmy, right? Timmy's on the one boat, and then his mom and dad are on the other boat, and he doesn't want anything to do with his parents, and he's like, I'm just gonna lay over here in the sun, right? We all see it, teenage boy. And talking to the parents, they're like, oh, he's just, oppositional, and he just doesn't listen to anything we say, and blah blah blah. And then I talk to him and he's like, my dad's dumb and my mom just doesn't care about me, and all the classic things that we've all heard a million times. And that's day one, and I get to observe that as part of just me guiding them down the river. And to every reaction and response that someone has, there's a reason. And when you can get to know that reason, you begin to understand the reaction and the response. And so I make it a point to just keep talking to each of the people on the trip and just figure out what's going on for them, why are they feeling that way, what might be going on in their lives. And as I get to know them a little better, I talk to Timmy. I'm like, hey, when we get to camp tonight, I want you to just help your dad set up the tents and cots for your family, right? Set it up for your mom and your sister as well. Like, just do it. And he's like, oh, that's so like, he'll just try and tell me how to do it, and I don't want to. And I'm like, just trust me. And then I'll talk to the dad, and I'm like, hey, I don't want you to tell him what to do. I don't want you to like, push him in any way. Just be there to support. If he asks for help, but let him figure it out. Let him do it. And so I kind of created this experience for them, and they go to camp and they do that. And by the time they're done doing that, they're coming back to dinner and they're like laughing and joking. Hours earlier, they like hated each other. And here we are. What had changed? Nothing. Like, they as people did not change, but their ability to talk to each other, to communicate, to feel seen and appreciated, and thanked for setting up cots rather than told what you're doing wrong. Like, that was such a cool thing. And throughout the rest of the trip, the next couple of days, more and more experiences like that happen, because when you're out in nature, the playing field is leveled. Nobody's in charge. Like, there's this dynamic in the household that is like mom and dad in charge. Kids have to do whatever they're asked, and if they don't, they're in trouble. Whereas out here, it's like, no, we're not we're not trying to get in trouble. We're just supporting each other in whatever we're experiencing. And so as time goes on, we get to the end of the trip, and Timmy's now like laying on his mom's lap, and she's playing with his hair, and they're all joking and laughing about the rapids and how so-and-so fell out. And it's just such a cool experience. So that's one thing that came to mind that I just remember being so pivotal.
Yeah, it's about, it encourages and promotes connection and working together. And yeah, that's I think that's a little bit of a sense that you've got an advantage over a lot of therapists. So what are some of the misconceptions? And I kind of spoke a little bit about that too, but some of the misconceptions people have about therapy and that being outdoors will and can address. What are some of the, myth, whatever?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite questions because obviously therapy is becoming more and more acceptable. It used to be like, oh, you go to therapy, you're crazy. Now it's like, oh, you don't go to therapy, you're crazy. So it's kind of the
Right.
script has flipped a little bit. But something that you touched on actually earlier as we were talking was your background in administrative, in a kind of a treatment facility for boys, or is
Mm-hmm.
that what you said, right? And
For
that was that
adolescents, girls and
for
boys.
adolescents. Yeah, girls and boys. Okay. For
Yeah.
so that was actually my intro to the world of psychology, was working
Mm-hmm.
at a treatment center as just a staff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I very, very quickly saw the flaws in that system
Mm-hmm.
because of how focused it is on one individual person in a system
Mm-hmm.
that is otherwise broken. And I'm talking not the system of the school, but the system of the family. Because if one
Mm-hmm.
person is doing the work to heal, but you go back into a system that has done no work to heal, then it's going to be very short lived, and you're going to be
That's right.
working. It's an uphill battle the rest of the time. And so I thought, how can I bring the entire family unit, the entire family system out to a wilderness style therapy? Well, I can't kidnap them in the night like they do to some people, and I don't want to do that. Like I want it to be a voluntary experience. I want people to want to change and want to grow and want to heal. Because I always joke about this, but like we're a lot more like dogs than we think we are, where humans respond to reward much better than they respond to punishment. And so if we're doing things to reward ourselves for the good we're doing, it's going to be much more lasting than if we beat ourselves up for the things that we're not doing. And so, long story short, the entire family system, if they can get out together and spend some time together and work on themselves together, then they're going to heal, right? And so that's something where what I created with this outdoor style therapy, and I say I created, obviously people have been doing this, but my business of get outside together, like the retreats and family vacations that are helping people to explore relationships and build connection. Um, the whole idea behind it is it's not therapy. It's a fun connection building experience, because who doesn't want to build connection with their family, with the people they care about? Ultimately, like
All right.
that's what therapy is. It's just called therapy instead of building connection with the people we care about, figuring out how to connect with ourselves. Like those are all synonymous for for therapy, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the outdoor aspect of therapy and being able to go hike and talk and go on a backpacking trip or whatever it is as therapy is much more inviting to a lot of people that are otherwise pretty recalcitrant towards the idea of any sort of therapy or psychology.
Yeah. It also yeah, absolutely. And it goes along with, you know, I've said it a lot, and I have, as I've gone through my process over the last 15 years, hardcore for the last 10 years, everything I talk about and the way I tell it is different now. But I used to overtly, not that I in my own brain don't still feel that way, but I overtly, would say, look, parents suck. I think parents absolutely suck. And I'm going to tie something in here, the things you were saying, uh, because most programs, like again, the facility I was at for it was late '80s, early '90s. Okay, everything was money driven. The insurance was still heavily involved in paying. We're our social worker that communicated with the insurance company, reading the treatment plan was all manipulated also into getting more time. And back then, you'd have a kid in a facility for 9 months, but you could have them in the facility for 9 months. So it's so much of that was going on too. But then the other thing was the parents. And this is where, like, talking about the outdoor and them being together and all that. So first of all, majority of the parents just, here's my kid. Can you fix him? Can you fix him? I don't
Yeah.
know what's wrong with him. As they're exhibiting nothing but poor behaviors whatsoever, and just spitting out, do as I say, not as I do, whether it's substances or behavior, whatever they're doing. It's and then when you try to engage them or get them to understand, if you want your child to change that you raised, that the chances are very, very high you're the one that created this. You're going to have to make some changes. Oh, what are you talking about? So that was, first of all, a struggle. And getting them to family therapy. And Zach also, back then, a little bit too, is again, they would, the adolescent, the kid would earn the privilege to go home for the weekend. And so they'd be so excited, it's 6 o'clock and, they've got all their stuff together on the porch of the log cabin and they're waiting for their parents to come drive up. And guess who never comes and drives up? You know what I'm saying? So that is it. I think that's a big problem still and a disconnect when how we're doing things. And certainly we just can't, not everybody can leave town or do things for periods of time as a family and get involved in those things. But I think that if as much as they can, I think that piece, that nature piece, putting everybody in this environment, working together, stressing their bodies, stressing themselves where they're relying on each other in more of an appropriate way, putting a tent up together, building a fire, going on hikes and just, why it's horrible. We just don't have a lot of those avenues. And there's going to be a question that comes up around that later. And I had something else on that, but maybe I'll remember it. So let's just keep going here. And I guess that ties into this a little bit. So advice for people that are in more urban areas that can't get to places. Do you have some advice for what we just kind of talked about, how they can maybe make some strides in with it not being outdoors because they don't have that exposure to it, maybe what they can do that's outside of the traditional kind of stuff we talked about?
Yeah, no, that's probably that's probably one of the most common questions that I get, actually, because there are tons of people who are unintentionally stuck in a place where they can't have this easy access. I mean, I'm born and raised in Moab. I walk 5 minutes and I'm at a world-renowned trail, right? I understand that I am very lucky and privileged to have that opportunity. And I think I heard this quote one time and it was like, the best present you can ever give a child is your presence. And I think that is so powerful because when it all comes down to it, what you're doing is less important than the energy and the enthusiasm and the intention behind what you're doing. And so if you are intentionally being present with your partner, your child, your friend, whatever it is, and you are away from your phone, that is going to be impactful. And I think I haven't read a ton of research, but some of the research I've seen is like the degree of difference between a really crazy high adventure activity outside or like a walk in the park is like this different. But the degree of sitting on your phone when you're with someone and walking in the park is a huge difference. So just do what you can. I always will say, just do what you can with the energy you have. Be present, be intentional, try. And that's going to speak volumes because nobody's going to care if you're perfect at what you're doing. Nobody's going to care exactly, the biggest trip that you ever did or any of that. They're going to just care that you tried. They're going to feel that effort and they're going to know that you care about them.
So I'm going to read something that is part of what I had written down here. I wasn't going to talk about it. It was just, it came up with when I was doing research on you, but that's you. This is exactly what basically you just said. And I just didn't realize it until you started thinking about it. So, but you've got burnout and self-care routines. With burnout being a trending issue on social media, Zach's approach to stepping away from screens and embracing nature-based self-care can be a refreshing angle for people stuck in, like you just said, environments that aren't conducive to it. So, yeah, this is again the pieces around social media, and so my thing with all this, Zach, is and what I'm trying to do with my podcast, and actually as I'm really changing my content now is a lot about the connection of social media with everything that we're doing. And I think it's moving so fast right now. It's not that it hasn't been here, but it's moving so fast right now. It is just part of life. It's the way it is. If you want to be relevant, you have to be on it, all these things. But the addiction to it, the negative side of it, actually, in my opinion, just as long as I've been on it, that outweighs more than the positives. Oof. And I think by a lot. So that's why I want to bring people like you on here, and that really, I think, that understands that with disconnecting from it. And I'm very guilty of that too, because one of the things is, because I'm 63, I've been married, divorced twice, but my last divorce was 13 years ago. And I've been doing so much solo stuff. And again, everything that's developed here has been unintentional, but it's just me. So, I can, social media is what I do. And I'm usually thinking about it or trying, so I can just get stuck in this thing. And then I'm going, well, I need to get out of here or whatever else. And go do a walk or go do whatever. And it takes a minute to get it out of my system. Does that make sense? To kind of break loose of it. It's kind of like, well, Scott, don't take your phone, just forget about everything, go take it to half a day. And I'm just like, and so finally I let go of it. But look, I'm the one that promotes so much of this stuff that you need to do to take care of yourself. And it's still, social media, because of what I do, I have to push myself, and I have to stay very, very conscious of how it affects me as well. And it's again that you're leading right into some of these things that I'm so happy you are, because it helps me not have to try to pull it out, because you're just naturally doing it.
It's interesting.
So let's keep going.
It's interesting, Scott, that you say that. I was just having the conversation with the friend, and I will go to my grave with this. You will be better off deleting social media than you will be consuming all the right types of social media. And people are like, and I feel like anytime I post about that, it's my least, the performance, it's the worst out of all of it. And I'm like, this is the hardest hitting truth out of everything, is that you will be happier if you just delete the apps and are just present with the people that are in your life than if you're not. And I understand there are people who have, feel as though they don't have people and social media is their thing. And so for that, I definitely sympathize and empathize a bit. But there are people out there that are feeling the same way in your community around you. And if you're present there, you will find them. And the odds are pretty good that in your own small town or big city or whatever, there are people that are also sitting there wishing they had friends that would happily be your friend. And so long as you are on your phones and just using that to cope, you won't find them. And so there definitely is that. And also I go to this too. Social media is a weird thing, and Instagram is so strange because we invest so much energy and effort into these people and these things that we follow and get nothing really in return. And they're benefiting, all these other people, these accounts we follow are all benefiting from our energy. And we're ultimately left with this void of I scrolled through, that was funny, that was good, I bought this course, I did this thing. And I'm saying it really is a business, it's marketing. And when you can see it that way and detach from it, it makes creating a boundary a little bit better. Because the hard truth is, all these people that you feel like are your friends, and I love and care about my people and my community deeply, but I don't have a relationship with them, and it's not possible to. It's just simply isn't. And if someone is on the other side of that feeling that way, it can be this fake sense of connection that lasts anytime you get hit a dopamine from the post, and so trying to post as much as possible to help those people also kind of hurts those people sometimes. And I'm completely aware of that. And so at first, when I started, in January, I was like, I'm going to post every day and see how it goes. And it took off and it blew up. And here we are, almost a year later. And I now post pretty infrequently. And have conflicted feelings about it all because yes, I want people to get the little, things that I'm sharing and whatever. But I ultimately, like, if I could just post one thing over and over again, it would be take a break, delete it, go be present with the people that are in your life, do something fun for yourself, get outside, drink some water, eat something, and keep going. Right? Like over and over. I would put that on repeat. I would have that every single day because that is the best thing for your mental health. That's the best thing for your connections, for your relationships. Like you learn all the things on here. You have probably 1,000 things bookmarked of what you want to do, and you're not doing
Right.
any of it because you have to stop being on social media to then go and put those things into practice. So to everyone listening, now's the
Yeah,
time I say, go put those into practice.
absolutely. And yeah, and I so again, there's everything that you said in there. Again, I have a lot of connection to and relationship to with social media and what you're talking about because I have so much data. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds over these last years of data, and it is every time I put out a friendly reminder. That would be something to have someone, like, for example, instead of focusing on other people's toxic behavior, why don't you stop and focus on your own for a minute? Oh my gosh, just crickets or just whatever.
Nothing.
But it's
It's the
every
most important
one
thing.
like that. Is that, look, if you cannot take the criticism, if you, and I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about everybody, anybody that's on social media. And I'm also talking about to creators in our space and creators everywhere else, that if you can't take criticism, you can't take a negative comment, and you are not in a place in your life where you have enough self-worth to just delete it, to block it, do whatever you need to do to just move away from that comment and move on with your day, then, and you have to address it. Or if you're a creator and you have to take that comment and put it up and then makes your own comment about it and like calling them out or things like that, get off. You need to get off social media if you want to help the rest of the world. If all of the people that are because this, if that are reacting to this stuff would get off social media, then the payoff for all of these people that are sad and struggling and have their own problems to find somebody and then put a negative comment on their post, is that's what feeds them. They're looking for a reaction. That's their payoff. They're sad. They want other people to hurt. And so when they get you, they're just fueled to keep going. Those people listening, and again, part of me wanting to do this kind of a platform this way is to encourage those that are in our space to be successful with this little tiny piece of the positivity corner we have, so we can just keep
Yeah.
keep moving it out. And I want to be able to support those people into it. But again, we just talked about how much of a double-edged sword all this is, especially for us, trying to create on this. Is so what are more of the things that you do that helps you maintain your authenticity and promoting, your mental health? Again, maybe just go a little deeper. We know that you can walk out and see the beautiful stuff, and you kind of
Yeah.
live in that environment. But what do you practice kind of regularly? Look, you can't maintain things unless you're doing things a little harder core to take care of yourself.
Yeah, I definitely have my routines. I love the gym. I love golf. I love basketball. I play and do those things every week, to some degree. Um, those are the things I kind of do for me personally, and then I read and journal a lot. Like, I think the authenticity thing, you say, what keeps you authentic out here? I was just talking to one of my other friends who's in the creative space, and he was just like, it's so frustrating to me that all these accounts that are like AI generated, whatever, will tell you exactly how to have like a viral reel or whatever it is. And you could easily go into that and get sucked into the game of virality. And all that does, really, personally, I believe, my belief is that it takes away you. It takes the you out of whatever it is you're creating and puts it into a different category. And so the authenticity is kind of gone there. And so my advice to that and to creators is post what you want, how you want, when you want. And I know it's hard because you're trying to make this like life and business out of it, and like, but just don't lose yourself in the fight to create something that makes money. Because ultimately you can get to the end of your life and you look back and be like, man, I wish I wouldn't have lost myself. I wish I wouldn't have sold myself to this and this and this. Right. But you'll never look back and be like, oh man, I wish I would have spent longer hours working and less time with the people I cared about. So really just making sure you have your priorities in check of like, I'm doing something to take care of myself. I'm doing something to be with the people I love first and foremost. And I'm going to create this thing here, and I'm going to give it energy, but I'm going to give it the energy that's extra after I focus on my priorities first. That's something I've had to find the balance of, because when I first started, I was 100% 13, 14 hours a day responding to comments, like all sorts of stuff. and it, I mean, cause it came out of nowhere. I went 0 to, 150, 160,000 people in a matter of months, and which is crazy. And I'm grateful and humbled by it. But I realized like that is not sustainable. It's not healthy. It's not helpful for me. You got to put systems into place so that it can kind of do its own thing while also staying authentic. If people are going to follow you for you, I think you owe it to them a little bit to be you. I don't know. It's a tough thing. It's like you say, it's a double-edged sword where part of me is like, yeah, you got to create this because then you can do so many things with it. But also if it's taking away from your own mental health and your own personal life, is it worth it?
Let's lead into that. So physical challenges. I mean, the physical part, like hiking and river rafting. So your take on, on how that helps overcome the mental stuff and the emotional obstacles, that, the physicality of things, because that's a big part of it. Like, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I just posted on my little chat that I have with all my people that this idea, it was a line from my journal, but just talking about me feeling behind at times, or like nothing's really working, or I can't see the progress that I'm making. And then I remembered that baby steps are still steps. And I think of the times I've hiked a really steep trail or whatever, and I wasn't running, it wasn't a full sprint. I wasn't, doing a record time. I was just doing a little step at a time. And slowly when I looked back, I saw how far I've come. But in the meantime, it just felt like it sucked, felt hard, felt like it wasn't going anywhere. But when you look back on things, you always can see just how far you've come. And I think with physical things, there's obviously limitations, and I love what actually like the Park Service and other things are doing with accessibility and helping it be able to be accessed by as many people as possible. But finding ways that are relative to you challenging physically is one of the greatest things that you can do for your own mental health, because it's a win. When you do anything that is hard and you complete it, doesn't matter how long it took, it doesn't matter how good it looks, you win, you won. You set out to do it and you did it. And I think we're so afraid of failure just as a society that we forget that failure is the only way that we grow. Failure is the only way that we learn. When we try something that we're afraid of and we get to it, then we learn what we need to do to accomplish it next time, or we learn that we're able to. And then we build our confidence, and then we feel better about everything. And yeah, you're going to have some failures and you're going to make some mistakes. But in the words of Miss Frizzle, I always quote Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus, is take chances, make mistakes, and get messy. And that's what life is all about. Life is messy. Life is about the risks and the rewards that come from it. And if you look at any of the most successful people that you see, right? Like lots of people listening would probably look at you and be like, man, he's so successful. Or look at me and be like, they've got it all going on. And I would just say to that, like, one, we don't have it all going on. Anyone that you admire has all sorts of things that they're still working on. No one is perfect. And two, we've probably just tried and failed a couple times more than the average person. And that's what got us to where we are. You know how many times I've tried to like start an account or make a post and just don't post it because I feel like it's not good enough. But guess what? I've gotten better at what I do because of all the times that I failed in doing it poorly. And when we can change that mindset and do the hard things, whether it's physical or mental, emotional, whatever, you're going to grow no matter what, because any step that you make is progress.
Absolutely. So the piece that ties into that is how would you advise people on social media? We've talked a little bit about this, but maybe just more straight at it is from what you just said about doing those things and getting those wins and building that confidence and things like that. Now, again, this is just me and in my opinion, self-confidence and self-esteem are external. Okay. Those are they're fleeting. Self-esteem, hey, Zach, I love your hat, man. It's a cool shirt. Yeah, you're looking cool today. Last few times I've seen you, most people are, well, that's kind of cool. That he appreciates that. And so you feel a little better about yourself. Self-confidence is like, is like golf. Is like, golf is one of the most cruel, we're just looking for that one shot. But my point is the repetition of it and getting better and obtaining that little goal we set for ourselves, or we hit that shot. So that builds our confidence up, right? But the minute 10 minutes later, golf has taken all that away from you again. But my point is your self-worth is internal. That's what, even if you go through either one of those processes I just brought up, it may hurt for a second or kind of get you, but the self-worth you've developed, or if you have a high self-worth, you just keep going. You keep doing it again. People always ask me, and so how would you advise people to get to the point of self-worth so that when they do go out to do those things, they're not worried about people making fun of them or commenting on something if they do post something about what they just accomplished, or that they're working on this thing and people are criticizing them? That's stupid. Why would you do that? You can't do that. How would you advise people to get through that part that don't really have the internal part yet or strong enough worth? Make sense?
Oof. Yeah, that's a hard question, and something.
And you don't have to. Yeah.
Well, I think it's something that everyone can relate to, of the whole idea of external validation, right? It's fleeting. It's something that, it feels so good when someone compliments how we look or whatever. But if we don't actually believe that about ourselves, it's going to remain as a fleeting validation. That is a little bit of a dopamine hit for a second, and then now I feel bad about myself. So, I mean, the most simple thing is, one, I'm going back to the social media thing, is if I posted literally yesterday, I think, about this, and like once a month or so, I say, hey, social media is media. It's meant to consume. If it doesn't add value to your life, it doesn't make you feel like you're doing better or like motivate you to do better, then unfollow it. Stop. Like you choose what to consume and what not to consume. Just like if you ate something that made your stomach hurt, you probably wouldn't eat it again, right? If it's making you emotionally feel pain, we need to learn how to do that too. And so starting off is getting rid of or catering our life to all the things that are holding us down and beating us up outside externally. We got to get rid of that, because if we're constantly being, bombarded by these thoughts and feelings, no matter how much we try, we can't lift ourselves out of it. We're just getting beat down. And so set yourself up for success rather than failure, and then be the person that validates yourself. Be the person that loves and cares for yourself. And the inner child work is a beautiful thing. And I'm a big proponent of that. Like, if you're going through something hard and you imagined your, 8-year-old, 10-year-old self, whatever, think back of a time in your life that was really hard for you. How would you speak to yourself in that moment? Because I for sure would not say any of the things that I say to my adult self that I would ever say then. But we are fueled and we are driven by our inner child. Like that is, if you imagine, like we're, have that inside of us, and externally we're doing all the things based on how we feel internally. And we choose what we allow to enter into our inner child. So if someone says that, oh, you're ugly or you're not good enough or whatever, you can choose with your adult present brain whether you internalize that message and you send it to your inner child, or whether you change it. And at that moment, you have to make that decision. You have to say, no, I'm not going to say that to them. Would I say that to my 8-year-old self? Absolutely not. So why am I saying it to myself now? And so learning how to do that and consistently doing that is huge. And as cheesy as it sounds, like mirror work is a big one, where if you can't look yourself in the mirror, eye to eye, right into the mirror, and say positive things about yourself, you are strong, you are capable, you are beautiful. And if you feel uncomfortable, if you feel like you don't believe it, that shows you where the work needs to be done. And the more you actually do that, the more it starts to become this pattern of thought and recognition that builds this defense for your inner child. And then, and only then, can you go and take on the world. Just like you were saying, if you're not able to handle the criticism or handle those things without it impacting you, without being able to push it away and let it go, then you've got work to do still. So instead of just posting all these random quotes and thoughts that you think are nice to get viral reels and to make yourself feel better momentarily because now you have millions of followers, ultimately, like, that's not going to help you be happy at all.
Very well said. Leader, you just can't do things at your best unless you are doing the work on yourself to be your best. And you have to having a high self-worth is what is going to get you through the criticisms, is what's going to get you there. But again, how do you get there? Well, sometimes you got to stop. For me, it was, disappear in the woods for a few years, and and to get to what I needed to do to understand all the stuff you're talking about, doing the inner child, all that kind of stuff is so important to get to a place of understanding all those things that were put in your head as a child that you wouldn't say to yourself now. You didn't put in your head when you were a child.
It's a process of, like you were saying, it's a process of unlearning, right? Because you take a small child, it's like we run around naked through the sprinklers when we're little, and there's no big deal. And then as we grow, we slowly are taught, like, what is wrong, what is right, do this, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. Don't eat these things because X, Y, and Z. Don't treat people this way because whatever it may be. And so we learn all these things of how we should be, who we should be, where we should put our time and attention, what we need to become as we grow up. And if that isn't actually aligned with who we are, then we're constantly battling an idea of who we need to be and who we actually are. And it's an impossible battle to win so long as who we think we need to be is winning. And so through this process, it's like we spend 20 plus years learning all these behaviors and things we should do, and then the rest of our life unlearning them. And the sooner we can focus in and recognize that and start unlearning behaviors and realizing that, like, oh, I can do this and it's going to be okay. I can be this way and this type of person and it's going to be okay. While also taking accountability, right? Take accountability for behaviors that are maybe harmful to other people. Like, don't just be, I can be whoever I want and it doesn't matter. But yes, you need to unlearn some of those things. And that is when you find, like, true happiness and self-worth, because you actually know who you are and why you're doing the things that you're doing.
Yeah, I love that. The other example to that, just to drive that home, is, when we are little, even where times we don't remember, is, when you're walking or starting to walk, and it's always, oh, come on, you got it. And if you fall down,
this idea.
It's oh, come on, get back up, you can do it, whatever. And then it's a few months later, you're motoring around the house. Well, what's the message then? Sit down, be quiet, don't do that, don't go here, whatever. It's just like, now the restraints are back on, and the limited thinking. Us having this conversation right now, I think that this is the conversations we don't have in society right now, especially with social media. It's all whatever what is negative. It's all what is something that's going to it's just like putting it talking about the I'm going to say this one other thing, talking about the inner child stuff and looking at yourself in the mirror and being able to have affirmations for yourself and things like that. I mean, you could look on my profile. I put this up maybe within the last week, another picture, but I was standing in front of the mirror. I took a picture of myself standing in front of the mirror, looking at myself, with a genuine smile on my face, because I was thinking about all this. And the caption in it was, I hope you look in the mirror today and feel loved. Making the point of, hope you're able to look at yourself and feel love for yourself. And again, crickets, people, because they have to look at that. They don't want to go look in the mirror and again have those feelings that they don't, because they're going to have to work on it, or they're going to have to address it. This is a whole nother podcast maybe we can have someday and talk about these things.
Let's do it.
How do we move past that? You know what I mean? So that's just another big thing. So lastly, what just to give you this opportunity here, what are you trying to do? Where do you want people to go and find you? What's kind of maybe in the little bit of the future for you? If I know how things change quickly. Just maybe talk about that for a second. Let's end this thing on that.
My main thing is, it always has been, I all my friends that are on Instagram and social media as like content creators are all like, you gotta like monetize this and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm doing fine. I will in time somehow, but I want it to feel authentic and real and like I just want everyone to know that like I'm doing this honestly, genuinely, because I've had times in my life when I haven't had someone when I needed it most. And while I know it's not a real, genuine, like friendship connection, sometimes all we need is a little bit of a friendly face to remind us that we're worth it. Mm-hmm. And that can be enough for us to remember and feel inside like, okay, I'm worth doing the work. And when I started all of this, that was really the thing. I saw so much information in the world of psychology and therapy and so little motivation. Everybody's seeing all the things they need to do differently, all the red flags in their relationship. Everyone's a narcissist, blah, 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 blah. There's so many random things. But what are you doing for you? And why is it important to figure that out? And that's the thing that I want to drive home always is I'm going to always just tell you that you're worth it and that you deserve the work that you're doing for yourself, because you do. Absolutely. And as far as social media goes, like that's kind of what I'm trying to do here is all. And then I have my retreats and my trips and stuff, and that's feel free to come join one of those if you want to. I wish everyone in the world could do that. But big projects and things I'm working on right now is I'm building out my van to be like a mobile office, to be able to travel around. And I want to do pop-up hikes like in random little towns where I have people that I know follow me in those areas. I'm going to be like, hey, meet me at this trailhead. Let's go for a hike. And I want to share as much as I can with as many people as I can in real life as well, because I'm definitely a proponent of real connection. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on. I'm working on a book right now that is a little bit of my story, because I've gone through lots of things in life and I've experienced things just like everyone has a story. And so I want to tell that story as well. And then just some random other little things, but Outdoor Therapist on Instagram, and then getoutsidetogether.com if you want to join a trip. But that's the best places to find me.
Nice. That's, Zach, I so appreciate you being on here. And I think you've got so much upside to helping, people get to that point of understanding their self-worth. And, I'm a fan and someone who, however I can help you in any way, especially after having you on the podcast here and getting to know you. Thank you for listening, and I hope the Self-Care Savage podcast has helped you in some way to start your own Self-Care Savage journey. If you have any questions, suggestions, or just a comment on today's show, there's an email in the show notes. Lastly, please subscribe, share with family and friends, and leave a rating and review. That's what helps spread the Self Care Savage message.